My father went to prison for a crime my brother committed. The first time I visited my father in prison, he smiled at me like I had come to see him at work. Not through glass, not with shaking hands, not like a man who had lost his freedom. He smiled gently, folded his hands on the metal table, and said, "You look tired, Rachel." That was my father. Even in an orange jumpsuit, even with guards standing 10 feet away, even after pleading guilty to a crime that had torn our family apart, he was worried about whether I was sleeping. I wanted to ask him why. I had asked him before, of course. Everyone had: his lawyer, the judge, my mother. My brother, me. Why would a 71-year-old man with arthritis, a weak heart, and no criminal history rob the pharmacy where he had picked up my mother's prescriptions for 15 years? Why would he shove a young cashier, steal a lockbox of opioid medication, and drive away in a car everyone in town recognized? Why would he plead guilty when the security footage was blurry, when the cashier could not identify him clearly, when there were questions nobody seemed willing to ask? But every time, Dad gave the same answer. I did it. Nothing more, no explanation, no anger, no fear, just those 3 words. I did it. At first, I believed him because I could not imagine my father lying about something so serious. Then I stopped believing him because I knew him too well. My father was not a perfect man. He could be stubborn, he could be proud, he could make silence feel like punishment. But he was not violent, he was not reckless, and he would never, ever hurt a stranger for pills. The morning after his sentencing, I drove home from the courthouse with my brother beside me, both of us silent. Evan stared out the passenger window, his jaw tight. "He'll be okay," I said, mostly because I needed someone to say it. Evan did not look at me. "He's old," he said. He should have thought of that before he did something stupid. I remember turning toward him at a red light. That was the first crack, not grief, not shock, not even anger, resentment, like Dad's crime had inconvenienced him. "Don't say that," I said. Evan rubbed his face. "I'm just tired of pretending this family is normal." The light turned green. I drove, and for the first time, I wondered if my father's silence had less to do with guilt and more to do with protection. 2 weeks later, I found the receipt. I had gone to Dad's house to collect some paperwork for his appeal, though he had not agreed to one. Mom had asked me to look for his medical files because the prison doctor needed confirmation of his heart medication. His bedroom looked untouched. His slippers were beside the bed. His reading glasses sat on the nightstand on top of a book he had been halfway through when the police came. I opened the drawer looking for insurance papers and found a folded pharmacy receipt tucked beneath a stack of old birthday cards. It was dated the same night as the robbery, 9:42 p.m. The robbery had happened at 9:18. The pharmacy was 15 minutes from Dad's house if every light was green. The grocery store from the receipt was 20 minutes in the opposite direction. The receipt was for milk, bananas, and blood pressure medication, paid with Dad's debit card. I stared at it so long the numbers blurred. Then I drove straight to the prison. Dad's face changed when I placed the receipt on the table between us. Not much, just enough. His eyes lowered. His shoulders sank. "Why didn't you tell your lawyer?" I asked. He folded the receipt carefully, as if I had handed him something fragile. "Where did you find this? In your drawer? You shouldn't have been going through my things." I almost laughed. "You're in prison, Dad. I know where I am." "Then tell me why you're here." He looked past me toward the guard. His voice dropped. "Rachel, let it alone." That should have scared me. Instead, it made me angry. "You have proof you weren't at the pharmacy." "No," he said. "Yes, you do." "No," he repeated, softer. "I have proof someone used my debit card." The room went cold around me. I understood what he meant before I wanted to. Someone else had gone to the grocery store. Someone else had Dad's card. Someone else was being protected. "Was it Evan?" I whispered. Dad closed his eyes, and that was my answer. I left the prison shaking so badly I had to sit in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. My brother. My little brother, who used to follow me around the yard with scraped knees and a superhero cape. My brother, who had cried at Dad's sentencing. My brother, who had called Dad stupid in my car. I wanted to reject it. But once I let the thought in, pieces began arranging themselves in ways I hated. Evan had been living with Dad for 6 months before the robbery. He said it was temporary after his divorce. He said he was helping Dad with Mom's appointments. He said he was getting back on his feet, but he always needed money. Gas money, rent money, money for his son, money for a business idea, money for a lawyer, and Dad always gave it. Quietly, privately, until maybe he couldn't anymore. That night, I called Evan. He answered on the third ring. "What's up?" I listened to the casualness in his voice and felt something inside me harden. "Where were you the night Dad was arrested?" Silence. Then a laugh too quick to be real. "What? You heard me. I was home." "With who?" "Rachel, what is this?" "Dad has a receipt from the grocery store at 9:42. Another silence. This one longer. So the robbery was at 9:18. "Then I guess Dad robbed a pharmacy and bought bananas." I closed my eyes. He sounded just like he had when we were kids, and I caught him lying. Defensive, mocking, already building the next version. "Did you use his debit card?" I asked. "I used it all the time." "He gave it to me. That night? I don't remember." "You don't remember the night our father supposedly committed a felony?" His voice sharpened. "Be careful." That was the second crack, not denial, warning. "Why?" I asked. "What happens if I'm not careful?" He breathed heavily into the phone. Then he said, "You'll break Mom," and hung up. For a while, I sat in the dark with the phone still pressed to my ear. Not Dad. Not me. Mom. The next morning, I drove to my mother's assisted living facility. She had moved there after a stroke 2 years earlier. Her speech had mostly returned, but stress made her words slow and uneven. When I walked into her room, she was sitting by the window with a blanket over her knees. She smiled when she saw me. Then she saw my face. "What happened?" I sat across from her. "Mom, did you know Evan used Dad's debit card the night of the robbery?" Her fingers tightened around the blanket. For a second, I thought she was confused. Then she looked away. That hurt more than if she had cried. "You knew," I said. She did not answer. "Mom," her lips trembled. "Your father made me promise." I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "No, don't put this on Dad. He's sitting in prison." She flinched. I begged him not to. "Then tell the truth." "I can't." "Why?" She looked at me then, and her eyes were full of terror. "Because it wasn't just the robbery." The room seemed to tilt. There it was. The next question, not what happened. How much had happened before it? Mom started crying, but quietly, like she was ashamed of making noise. "Evan was taking pills," she said. I sat back down. "He said it started after his back injury. Then he lost control. Your father found out when money started disappearing." "How much money?" Mom wiped her cheeks. "At first, a few hundred, then more." "How much?" She closed her eyes. "Almost 30,000. I felt the number hit me like a slap. "From who?" "From us." I could barely speak. "And you didn't tell me?" "Your father thought he could fix it." That was my father too. A man who could rebuild a porch, repair a leaking sink, calm a crying child. A man who believed every problem could be solved if he carried enough of it himself. "He paid Evan's debts," Mom said. "He found a treatment center. Evan promised he would go." "But he didn't." She shook her head. "The night of the robbery, Evan came to the house shaking. He said someone was going to hurt him. He said he owed money. Your father took his keys. And then, Evan left anyway. With Dad's car." She covered her mouth. "With Dad's jacket," I said. Her eyes filled again. "With his hat." That was why the footage had looked like Dad. Same car, same build from the back, same old brown jacket he wore everywhere. My brother had dressed himself as our father. Then our father had confessed. I should have felt relief because now I understood. Instead, I felt sick because I was only halfway there. "Why would Dad plead guilty?" I asked. "He could have told the police Evan had a drug problem." Mom looked smaller than I had ever seen her. "Because Evan said he would kill himself." I leaned back. There are sentences that steal all the air from a room. That was one of them. "He told Dad if he went to prison, he would die before trial," Mom whispered. "Your father believed him. And you?" I didn't know what to believe. I wanted to be compassionate. I wanted to remember she was sick, frightened, dependent on them both. But anger rose so fast I could taste it. "You let Dad go to prison?" "I lost both of them that night," she said. "No," I said. "You protected one and sacrificed the other." Her face crumpled. "I left before I said something I could not take back. For 2 days I did nothing. I went to work. I answered emails. I bought groceries. I acted like I had not learned that my family had traded my father's freedom for my brother's silence. Then the prison called. Dad had collapsed. By the time I reached the hospital ward, he was awake, pale, and irritated that everyone was making a fuss. The guard stood outside his door. His wrists were cuffed to the bed. That image broke something in me. My father, who had taught me how to ride a bike, handcuffed after heart failure because my brother had been afraid to face consequences. I sat beside him. "You're going to die in there," I said. He looked at the ceiling. "Don't be dramatic. I'm not. I made my choice." "No," I said. "Evan made a choice. Mom made a choice. You made a sacrifice nobody had the right to accept." His jaw tightened. "He's my son, and you're my father." That made him look at me. I had never said it like that before, not as a plea. As a claim, you don't get to stop belonging to me because Evan needed saving. His eyes shone, but he turned his face away. I took his hand. "Tell me the truth." His fingers were cold. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "I thought if I gave him time, he'd get clean." "Is he?" Dad closed his eyes, and that was another answer. I went to Evan's apartment the next morning. He opened the door looking thinner than I remembered. His eyes were red. His hands kept moving. "What do you want?" Dad collapsed. For 1 second, real fear crossed his face. Then he looked away. "He okay?" "No, he's in prison for you." His mouth twisted. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know about the pills." He stepped back like I had shoved him. "I know about the money," I said. "The jacket, the car, the receipt." His face changed with every word, not into guilt, into calculation. "Mom told you." "She told me enough." He laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. She always folds." That was the third crack, not panic, contempt, for Mom, for Dad. For everyone who had protected him. "You need to come with me," I said. "Where? To a lawyer today?" "No, Evan." "No," he snapped. "Dad confessed. It's done." I stared at him. There are moments when love does not disappear, it simply loses the argument. "You're going to let him die in prison." His eyes filled with tears. For a second I saw my little brother again. Then he said, he offered. The words landed quietly, almost gently. That made them worse. "He offered," I repeated. "He said I had a life left. He said I had a son. He said he was old anyway." I felt my stomach turn. "And you let him?" Evan wiped his face angrily. "You think I wanted this? I think you wanted not to pay." His expression hardened. "You always thought you were better than me." "No, I thought you were sick." "I was." "Were?" He looked away. That was when I saw the pharmacy bag on his kitchen counter. Not old, not hidden, fresh. I walked over and picked it up. His name was not on the label. Dad's was. The prescription had been filled 3 days earlier, while Dad was incarcerated. For medication Dad was supposed to receive through the prison doctor. I held the bottle up. "How did you get this?" Evan's face went blank. Then he moved toward me, not fast, not violently, but with enough intent that I stepped back. "Give it to me." "No, Rachel." I put the bottle in my purse. He grabbed my wrist. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then he let go like I had burned him. His voice dropped. "You don't understand?" "Then explain it." He shook his head. "Dad didn't take the blame just because of the robbery." My pulse started pounding. "What else?" Evan's eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me. "He said if the police looked too closely, they'd find everything. Everything. There was always another layer." "What everything?" Evan laughed once, hollow and frightened. "Ask Mom what happened to the house." I drove to the county records office before I went back to my mother. I did not want another half-confession. I wanted paper. I wanted dates. I wanted something my family could not soften with tears. It took 2 hours and one impatient clerk to find what Evan had meant. Dad had taken out a home equity loan 8 months before the robbery. $85,000. My parents' house was almost paid off before that. Now it was mortgaged again. The signature on the loan documents was Dad's. Mom's signature was there too, but my mother had been in rehab after her stroke on the date listed. She could barely hold a spoon then. She could not have signed mortgage papers. I sat in my car holding the copies, realizing the robbery was not the beginning. It was the cover-up collapsing. Evan had not just stolen pills. He had drained money, forged Mom's signature, pushed Dad into debt, and then committed a crime in Dad's clothes. And Dad had confessed not only to protect Evan from the robbery. He had confessed to keep police from uncovering the financial ruin underneath it. When I showed Mom the loan documents, she began to shake. "I didn't know," she said. This time I believed her, not because she deserved it, because the fear in her face was new. "He said it was a small loan," she whispered. "Your father said he handled it. Dad knew?" She nodded slowly. "He found out after. Evan said he would pay it back." I pressed my hand to my forehead. "With what?" Mom did not answer, because we both knew, with nothing, with more lies, with more time, with more pieces of Dad's life. That night I went back to the hospital ward. Dad looked worse. Smaller. As if each truth I uncovered had been another pound taken from his body. I placed the loan documents on his blanket. He did not touch them. "I know about the house." His face caved in, just slightly, but enough. "Rachel, no, you don't understand what it's like to watch your child destroy himself." "You're right," I said. "I don't." His eyes filled. "But I understand what it's like to watch my father disappear one lie at a time." He swallowed hard. I pointed to the papers. "Evan forged Mom's signature." Dad whispered. "I know. He stole your medication." I suspected. "He is still using." His eyes closed. "You knew that too." A tear slipped down the side of his face into his gray hair. I hoped I was wrong. That was the deepest wound, not that Dad had lied. That hope had made him help Evan keep hurting everyone. "I'm going to the prosecutor," I said. His eyes opened. "No, yes, you'll destroy your brother." "No," I said. "I'll stop him." He tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. "Please." I had never heard my father beg. It almost worked. Almost. Then I looked at the cuff around his wrist. And I remembered being 12 years old, standing behind him while he fixed my bike chain, telling me, "Love means doing what helps, not what hides." He had forgotten his own lesson. I had not. The prosecutor's office did not welcome me warmly. Nobody likes being told they imprisoned the wrong man, especially by a daughter with a folder full of family documents and barely controlled rage. But the receipt mattered. The loan mattered. The prescription bottle mattered. The pharmacy footage mattered more when they watched it again beside a recent photo of Evan wearing Dad's old jacket. Most of all, the cashier had always said one thing that had been ignored. The man moved too quickly. At trial, they had blamed panic. But my father could barely climb porch steps without gripping the railing. Evan could move. Evan could run. Evan had run from responsibility his whole life. 3 weeks later, detectives interviewed my mother. Then me. Then Dad. He refused at first. Of course he did. But when they showed him the bottle with his name on it, filled while he was behind bars, he stopped protecting the fantasy. Not Evan. The fantasy. The idea that one more sacrifice would save him. Dad did not give a dramatic confession. He did not tell a long story. He simply said, "My son took my car that night. I said I was driving." Then he cried. I had seen my father angry, tired, disappointed, proud. I had never seen him broken. Evan was arrested 2 days later. He called me from jail 6 times. I answered the 7th. His voice was raw. "You happy now?" "No, you ruined my life." "No," I said quietly. "I finally stopped helping you ruin ours." He went silent. Then he said, "Dad promised." I closed my eyes. That was the problem. For the first time, he had no answer. Dad's conviction was vacated 5 months later. He came home on a gray afternoon with a plastic bag of belongings and a body that seemed 10 years older. Mom cried when she saw him. He did not rush to her. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking at the house he had nearly lost, the wife he had lied to, the daughter he had forced to become the adult in the room. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said, "not for getting caught, not for being sick, not for making things difficult." For all of it, I hugged him carefully because he felt fragile, but I did not say it was okay. It wasn't. Love did not erase what he had done. It only gave us a reason to face it honestly. Evan eventually pled guilty to robbery, forgery, and fraud-related charges tied to the loan. His sentence was not light, but it was not as harsh as it could have been because he agreed to treatment and restitution. Mom sold the house. That was the consequence nobody wanted to talk about. There was too much debt, too much damage, too much history soaked into the walls. Dad moved into a small apartment near me. Mom stayed in assisted living. They visited each other sometimes, politely, sadly, like people who had survived the same fire but could no longer live in the same room. As for Evan, I still received letters, some angry, some apologetic. Some clearly written after therapy sessions. I read them all. I answered only the ones that told the truth. People sometimes ask if I forgive him. They want a clean ending. A sister forgives. A father comes home. A family heals, but real healing is not clean. My father lost months of his life because he confused love with rescue. My mother lost her home because fear kept her silent. I lost the version of my family where the worst thing we did was argue at holidays. And Evan lost the protection that had been slowly killing him. The last time I visited him, he looked different, not better exactly. Just stripped down, no performance, no excuses. He sat across from me in the same kind of room where I had once begged my father for the truth. "I hated you for telling," he said. "I know, I still do sometimes. I know that too." He stared at his hands, then he whispered, "But Dad would have died in there." I did not answer, because we both knew it was true. His eyes lifted to mine, and I would have let him. That was the final truth, not the robbery, not the pills. Not the forged loan. The deepest betrayal was that my brother had accepted our father's life as payment for his own mistakes. And the deepest mercy was that we stopped letting him. When I left the prison that day, I sat in my car for a while before driving home. The sky was bright. The kind of bright that makes everything look sharper than it should. I thought about Dad at his kitchen table, learning how to live with freedom again. I thought about Mom, folding blankets in a room that was not the home she had expected to grow old in. I thought about Evan, finally sitting with consequences nobody could take from him. Then I started the car. For years, my family had called silence love. We called sacrifice loyalty. We called enabling protection. But the truth had a way of naming things correctly. My father did not go to prison because he was guilty. He went because he loved my brother the wrong way, and I brought him home by loving him enough to stop the lie.